Well, don't just sit there. Turn it up. It's time for .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers. In New London, Connecticut, I'm your host, Carl Franklin. And from Alabama tonight, Mark Dunn, the Southern man.
Yes. Here I am.
So what's happening down in Alabama? What are you there for?
Oh, I'm down here teaching a VB.NET class.
Cool.
So it's been a lot of fun. We had an interesting week because tornadoes were a problem early in the week.
Wow.
I felt like I was back in high school again. We start the class on Monday morning. Sirens go off, and they bring everyone out in the hall.
Jeez.
Now, you remember that in school when you did drills? You had to go out in the hall and like put a book on your head?
Or something.
Yeah, it was like that. So for like 45 minutes, we're standing out in the hall.
With a book on your head?
Well, no, I didn't have a book on my head.
You
know, I was trying to tell jokes and lighten things up.
Hey, speaking of jokes, man, I don't know, but my class this week, I have 9 people in it, and I cannot tell a good joke. I mean, I've told my best jokes, and I hear crickets every time.
Tough crowd. Very
tough, but, you know, they're loving the class. They love the class. They're just, I don't know. I have to prod them to get a chuckle out of them. It's kind of unnerving, you know? Maybe it's just that my humor is beginning to suck. It could be that.
Well, I gotta come up with some new material then.
Well, it's not like they've heard it before, you know. It's a new group. I've never seen these people before. But, you know, really good stuff, too. You know, one of my favorite jokes is that we get some new events in ASP.NET. Kind of like, you know, we have some old events like session on end, but the main difference is that they work now. You know, that's the big difference.
Right.
You know, nothing. Not even a chuckle.
Well, maybe they're not ASP developers.
No, they're all ASP developers. They get it. They understand it. It's just, I don't know. I can't be funny to save my life. This week. Last week, our last class, I was the funniest guy in the freaking universe. I guess maybe they just, you know, shut up and teach us something. Maybe that's what it's all about. How's your class going this week?
It's going well. We are caught back up from the 45-minute tornado delay that we had. So it's a fun class. I'm teaching a Microsoft class that kind of covers everything. You know, you've got the framework, you've got Windows development, web services, ASP.NET.
Hey, that sounds familiar.
ADO.NET.
Yeah, very cool. So this is the sort of the master class equivalent?
Yeah, it is. It's sort of like the master class.
Oh, cool. Which one is better?
Oh, well, you know.
I
can't really say.
You probably shouldn't say.
That's right. I derive a lot of my work from Microsoft.
And that didn't infer anything right there,
right,
Microsoft,
right.
If you're listening. It's a great class. Well, the only news that I could find this week that I can share was that Microsoft Windows CE.NET has been unveiled to do IP-based set-top boxes for DSL networks. So, in Las Vegas, what was it, yesterday, April 8th, the National Association of Broadcasters Convention, at there, Microsoft announced that the next version will include Windows Media 9, which offers the same video quality in 1/3 the bitrate of MPEG-2 and 1/2 the rate of MPEG-4 over IP network. So that says something about Windows Media 9. I just started working with that, actually. I'm going to try to do this latest Sunny Day video with MPEG, with Windows Media 9.
Yeah, we should mention that. We have a new Sunny Day video coming out.
It's coming out, yeah. If it's not on the site by the time you hear this, it should be soon. It's the long-awaited Sunny Day number 3.
Right. Well, I previewed the video to my class right after we talked about objects.
Yeah.
And it was a big hit.
Yeah, I showed it to my class. They grinned a little.
You just had a tough crowd.
It's been a really tough week. Like I said, you know, I'm getting great results on evals, and they're doing the labs, and they really the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. It's just they don't laugh. Oh well.
They're laughing on the inside.
Yeah, great. They're laughing at me. They don't want to laugh at me, so they're being polite, right? Inside they're saying, "What a dork." Yeah, I heard that in 6th grade, man. Shut up and show me some code. Well, we're in luck tonight, and hey, for the first time, probably, I am as excited as you are, I bet.
That's hard to imagine.
I think excited is the key word tonight. Because we have the one, the only, Dino Esposito with us tonight. Hey, Dino.
Hey.
I'd like to introduce you formally, if I can.
Oh, wow.
By
Okay, but if you're gonna introduce me first, pronounce my last name correctly.
I'm sorry.
The Italian way.
Esposito.
No, Esposito.
Esposito.
Okay.
Esposito.
I know everything about, I think, an American or a Canadian hockey player, very famous. Yeah, but
right. Esposito.
Yeah, okay. Esposito, that's the Italian pronunciation.
Well,
okay?
I want to be one of the guys, so I will pronounce it correctly.
Oh, okay, great.
I'm sure you'll like this introduction because you have a new book out on ASP.NET programming. You are a Wintellect ADO.NET expert, a trainer, a consultant. You probably write the most interesting articles in MSDN magazine. The thing I like about your articles is that you're always thinking about how to apply the technology in the real world, and I like that. It's not just simply, hey, you can do this, or here's how you do it. You are your articles on the web include the Shell Game column on CodeGuru.com, ASPtoday.com, www.win2000mag.net. You also have several books going on: Professional ASP 3.0, Professional Windows DNA, Shell Programming from Rox Press, Instant DHTML Scriptlets, and Windows Script Host Programmer's Reference. I got to say something. When do you have time to eat?
Well, when I'm in Birmingham, in Alabama.
And preferably not ribs, right?
No, not ribs, no.
So, Mark, what happened with the ribs? Tell me the story.
Well, it wasn't ribs. I think, let's see, you got chopped beef, didn't you, Dino?
Oh, barbecue.
Right. Dino wanted to experience some local fare there in
first
Birmingham.
of all, Dino is in Birmingham this week for some reason. What are you there for?
To teaching, of course. Teach, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so you're teaching.
What other reason?
So you guys hooked up and you took Dino out to an authentic Southern American barbecue place, right?
We went to Johnny Ray's, which
God.
is a classic in Birmingham.
So what happened?
Well, I was telling Dino about barbecue on the way there, and he was thinking it might be good. But I don't think it was quite compatible with his palate.
Well, I mean, you're from Rome. You have the best wine, the best food,
Yeah.
Barbecue. This is the stuff we throw away, right?
But actually,
with some sauce.
Actually, the first time that I came to the States, it was 8 years ago, probably in '95 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Washington, and I wanted to try something that, for some reason, sounded promising to me.
Yeah.
But I tried that. I had a sandwich with that kind of stuff inside. Only one bite. Then I throw it away. And it was the barbecue, exactly the same stuff that I ate yesterday.
Oh, no. So you didn't tell him you hated barbecue when you drove into the place. Hey, I really hate this stuff.
No, actually, the stuff that I got yesterday was not that bad, but yeah, okay. Compared to the one that I had in Washington, without knowing the name of the kind of the stuff, but
right. Well, I don't think Washington is the barbecue capital of the United States.
No, they're not known for pork up there.
That's right. They don't even have pigs in Washington. They they have the kind that fly, basically.
That's true.
Yeah.
But we were able to join a couple of friends of mine there in Birmingham to go out to eat. So once we were finished, they suggested, of course, that we go get ice cream. We went to a place called the Coal Slab, and
oh my God!
After dinner, I wanted to be laid out on a coal slab.
Lord, good Lord!
Yeah, after having a bowl of ice cream the size of my head.
How do you like American ice cream as compared to gelato or the stuff that you have in Italy?
Roughly the same was good.
Okay.
Was good.
It's roughly the same?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
It's very good.
Oh, cool.
But my friends are going to take, I guess, Dino out to get a steak. Is it tomorrow night that you're going to go out?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still there, Dino?
Yeah, I'm still there. Okay, no, I'm thinking. I always think before I speak.
Oh,
that's why I speak so fast.
Uh-huh.
and so much.
What was the story you were going to tell me about Esposito?
Now, there was a friend who was like you
Not
when
funny?
he learned about the correct pronunciation of my name.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to show this sort of knowledge with his own friends, and he started pronouncing the name of the hockey player the Italian way, and the result was that say, "Why, are you crazy? What are you saying? It's Esposito." No, the Italian pronunciation is correct. We don't care about that. We say Esposito.
Everything has its proper time and place. Its proper context.
Yeah, proper context.
Yeah.
And also along this guideline, there's a similar story that it was a few years ago. I was watching tennis on TV, and the journalist presenting the players said there was a Swedish journalist who was talking about an Italian player, but he was pronouncing the pronunciation of the Italian name said from a Swedish man.
Right.
Sounded like cane, but now cane in Italian means dog.
Oh.
So someone said, so it was nice saying, cane, this dog of player, this was sounded like, this player plays like a dog.
Oh no. This player plays like a dog. Fergie, burgie, durgie, fergie, burgie.
Hey, Scooby-Dooby?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I'm Swedish too, so.
Yeah, okay. That's the Swedish accent. Okay,
I can pick on the Swedes.
I missed that.
Yeah, I can pick on the Swedes.
I'm familiar with the Danish one.
Yeah, they don't talk to each other very much, the Swedes and the Danes. Is that true? I don't think they, I think they have a little rivalry going over there.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, who can be the most neutral or something. I don't know. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So let's talk about you.
Yeah.
So tell me about your new book.
The new book, the official guide, hopefully, the bestseller guide, more hopefully, about ASP.NET and targeted to version 1.1.
Okay,
and
the new
framework.
Due
out exactly in July 1st of July or something like that, from Microsoft Press.
Okay.
It's going to be programming ASP.NET, so everything that you need to know to program in more than 1,000 pages.
Wow. What are some of the highlights of what you can do new in version 1.1 framework?
Well, in the framework, in version 1.1, I don't think there are big changes. Little changes that you can see. Little changes that can be considered as new features for you as a programmer.
Right.
But
okay.
I think that the most interesting part of the story is what you cannot see or what you don't see unless you seek for it. And security is an interesting area of changes in version 1.1.
Okay.
Yeah. And in particular, there is something that I discovered talking to a few Microsoft guys, and it has to do with potentially risky behavior, seriously risky behavior that we have in version 1.0, and has been changed silently and efficiently in version 1.1. And it has to do with impersonation.
Okay.
Actually, if you try to impersonate an identity in version 1, this operation is performed by the worker process of ASP.NET. And any process under a Windows operating system prior to Windows 2003 to perform impersonation needs to call it Win32 API logon user or something like that. But more interestingly, to be able to make a successful call to that API, the process needs to have an administrative privilege.
Ooh.
Not necessarily enabled. Okay? But still granted. Then the API will take care of enabling and disabling in the shortest time possible that privilege. But still, that privilege must be granted to the API. And this is a potential hole in security. Inversion of this sort of behavior depends on the fact that the operating system, so Windows, not ASP.NET, not the framework, but just Windows, requires to make a call to this API certain privileges. This feature will be fixed at the root with Windows 2003 Server, where this privilege will not be requested any longer to perform impersonation. So the trick that they performed in ASP.NET 1.1 to avoid the worker process of ASP.NET to be granted this privilege, potentially risky privilege, was simply performing a trick like this. They basically revectored the call from the worker process back to the ASP.NET ISAPI.
Okay.
And it's the ISAPI component running within the context of an Internet Information Server, which performs the impersonation, gets the token from the system, and then memory maps that token back to the worker process of ASP.NET. So the worker process is not granted that dangerous privilege because it doesn't need it, basically.
Right.
And all the hard job is done by IIS, and in particular by the ASP.NET ISAPI filter.
Very nice.
That's the story. It's a neat trick.
Yeah, that works.
And it works. And this is only probably the most interesting and the most effective of the many changes in security that we find not directly visible from the API level, from the .NET framework level. But security is serious. Microsoft has been serious about security in version 1.1 of the framework, and that's the most interesting area they changed. So I don't think there are big changes in the framework in terms of methods, new classes, and stuff like that.
Do you think that as people may or may not know, we've mentioned it before, but not everybody hears every episode, that the framework 1.1 on the intranet zone has full trust now in 1.1.
Yeah.
By default. Do you think that is going to invigorate the auto deployment revolution? In other words, let people take a real hard look at ASP.NET for intranet versus Windows Forms with auto deployment?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
We don't see a lot of people using it quite yet.
No, you really don't. I mean, I know a lot of companies that have figured it out and that are using it and that get it, but it's certainly not a well publicized feature of .NET.
I agree. Yeah, it's not very talked about as a feature yet.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Dino, we were talking about VIEWSTATE a little bit last night. You mentioned something that I wasn't aware of. Carl, you may have known this, but Dino was saying that VIEWSTATE is by default encrypted.
Well, actually, it's not encrypted.
It looks like it's base 64 encoded.
Well, but enable Mac, I think you said, was on or set to true.
Okay, that's the story. It's not encrypted. The VIEWSTATE is not encrypted. It's still encoded, base 64 encoded. But
which for
also in version 1. When the page posts back, the VIEWSTATE is Mac checked, and the fact that this happens by default anyway is not written correctly in version 1 documentation. Only this, and the documentation is correct about that, about enable VIEWSTATE Mac, that property on the page class.
So what are you saying, that it checks the MAC address of the calling code?
It simply means that when the VIEWSTATE is generated, the VIEWSTATE is made of basically the content of the state bag class, binary serialized.
Yeah.
And then this content, before being base 64 encoded, it is it is hashed using a few blocks of information to generate this sort of key. One of the values is an internal key stored on the server in the local security authority.
Okay.
And this key is generated upon installation of the framework, of the ASP.NET framework in particular. And another interesting changes that we have in version 1.1 is that you can specify, and there is a new property on the page class. You can specify a string, a custom string that is also used, that also contributes together with some server-generated values to hash the content, the stream of bytes that represents the serialized version of the view state. As a result, so you can add your own level of, well, actually, it's not a personal level of security, but you can contribute to the security by adding user-specific information. Okay. And there's a new property called VIEWSTATE user key.
Oh, great!
On the page class that you can use to give your own contribution to the final key that is used to hash the content of the serialized ViewState. And after this, the ViewState is base 64 encoded and sent to the client. When the page posts back, the content of the ViewState is hashed back and is checked basically for tampering. And only if everything goes fine, the ViewState is decoded and is used actually. Well, the check against tampering, so this check against possible malicious attacks performed on the client is not performed by default. This is what the documentation in version 1 says. But this was exactly one of the those changes that Microsoft entered, last-minute changes, just before they shipped version 1 in January, February 2002. So only the documentation in version 1 is incorrect, but the code works fine and works securely, more importantly. In version 1.1, they added the property ViewState user key, and they fixed the documentation. So read documentation of version 1.1 if you want if you want to understand, or my book, or get my book.
Good. You mentioned something, and I know Mark has a question too, but you mentioned something about the local security store on the server.
Yeah, local security authority, LSA. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm just quoting the documentation.
Okay. There is a place on the system where you can store keys. Is that right, for safe storage?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The local security authority is something that has to do with operating systems. It's a feature, it's a subsystem of the operating system.
Okay.
But what you said reminds me just of another feature that is available in version 1.1, but also with Service Pack 3 for version 1. And the possibility that you now maintain critical information like passwords, for example, outside of the config files. You know, if you...
Right.
Okay, if you
That's
want
why
to...
I was interested in that local security authority.
Yeah, for example, if you want to impersonate, if you need for an application to impersonate a fixed identity, so you have to specify username, and that will be the list, and password.
You obviously want to encrypt that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now you can encrypt passwords. But encryption of the password is not something that takes place within the config file. In the config file, basically, you store a link, a reference, a forward reference to a location within the registry where the password and even the usernames are stored, encrypted this time, really encrypted this time, and there is a little utility, ASP.NET _setreg, a new executable part of the framework, of the SDK, and with this utility you specify the registry path you want to use, the registry keys you want to be created, and the values to store. And this utility encrypts the information and stores that into the registry. And in the config files, only for a few sections of the config files, session state, identity, and there's another one I can't remember exactly now. Only for a process model, I think. Only for elements in these three sections of the web config file or the machine config file. Instead of passwords and usernames, you simply store references to the paths within the registry.
Huh.
And this works also in version 1 as long as you have Service Pack 3 installed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this was all new info to me. Carl, did you know about this?
Somewhat. I knew about the VIEWSTATE hash in 1.1. I wrote an article for MSDN on the new features, and but I didn't realize the thing about the MAC address being encoded into the VIEWSTATE. Didn't know that.
Yeah. Actually, if you ever tried to if you turn the tracing feature on a website on a web page that for which VIEWSTATE is disabled, have you ever tried that? Well, if you try that, what really happens is that you see that in the tracing, in the information in the traced information, you see that the size of the VIEWSTATE is always 20 bytes, at least 20 bytes, even if VIEWSTATE is disabled, and the 20 bytes are exactly the size of the key.
Oh,
yeah,
very cool.
Well, I know we don't have our summer schedule up yet, but we're working on it. But hey, we wanted to tell you that we've added some great new topics to the VB.NET Masterclass, none the least of which is .NET remoting. We've talked about it here on .NET Rocks, and you may be very curious about it as an alternative to web services. And now I can show you a very easy, repeatable pattern for using .NET remoting with data sets and your business objects using the Internet Information Server, the HTTP channel, and the binary formatter. Another topic we've added is GDI Plus programming, showing you how to do graphics and printing, and we've added a topic on asynchronous calls and multi-threaded applications. So, check out the VB.NET Masterclass. You'll be glad you did. Now let's get back to our talk with Dino Esposito, and hey, pardon my cold, it's been a rough week. Here on .NET Rocks, don't you go away.
I always get asked this question.
Yep.
Maybe you can tell me. What's the best practice? And if I hear that intro to a question one more time, what's the best practice for storing connection strings in config files in the registry and this and that? And my answer is always, well, it totally depends on the security of your web server, I think. If your web server is completely secure with NT security, and it's locked down, the file system's locked down anyway, just put it in clear text in the config file. Mm-hmm. You can also use encryption to encrypt. One thing that I've been doing a lot, and I really like it, is in my business object, I'll make a property that is the encrypted connection string, and I'll hard code a key in there, or I'll get a key from somewhere. That's another thing I want to talk about. Where do you put your keys? But which I was alluding to with the security authority. Maybe I could do that. And then use that as a dynamic property. So it's automatically written out to a config file. And I can use another, with the same key, the same public key, I can use another program to encrypt the connection string. So I can set it from one program, and then it is encrypted on the disk and in the config file and read and decrypted. So I want to hear what your ideas are for that.
Well, personally, I think that that's a personal preference. I don't like to work myself with encryption and decryption. So personally, I love solutions that can give me protection against attacks, that can keep my information, my private data protected, but without forcing me to explicitly make use of encryption. So personally, I like very, very much the approach based on the registry, and especially the approach based on the fact that the encryption is managed directly by the framework.
Okay.
Also consider that the registry is outside the web space of an application.
The only thing I have against the registry is that if you have to reinstall Windows for any reason, you lose all that stuff.
Oh, well, okay, yeah, that's correct. Actually, there are tools to back up the registry.
Okay.
Also, portions of the registry. So I don't think that's. I know enough. I think I know enough about the registry, and I'm one of the very few guys on the face of the earth that are not really scared of working with the registry, or opening the registry and deleting keys within the registry and stuff like that.
Well, as long as you know what you're deleting, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, actually, it was nice because I taught a couple of years ago. I taught a class. A part of that class was an advanced Windows 2000 class. Was just consisting of performing serious manipulations on the registry and then restoring everything as it was before. So, actually, I personally, I like the approach involving the registry. And, otherwise, I think that you have, if you don't want to use the registry and the approach and the architecture that they built in version 1.1, I think that, you have to manage. The only other possibility you have is managing encryption directly yourself. So I think that your solution, is not too bad.
Yeah.
All in all.
Okay.
It's not my favorite one, but I mean, it's a matter of preference.
Sure. Yeah. I
right.
would
So your
tend to agree.
favorite, I guess, approach would be to take a connection string and stick it in a key in the registry. Is that right?
No. Dino's saying he would use this pointer into an encrypted item in the registry that the encryption is done for him. What is the code or the function or whatever that does that, Dino?
No, actually, you still use the configuration API.
Okay.
It doesn't change anything in your code.
Okay. So
that's
it's
the neat part of the story.
It's just a config file entry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, now that you make me thinking a little more in detail about this feature, I have to say that today you mentioned explicitly connection strings. Okay, using the registry in this way is not supported is not supported outside a very few. So it's not a general feature, this one. It's only specifically designed for passwords and for usernames. So connection strings is outside it's outside the power. It's not something you can obtain using this feature. So,
I see.
Well, because only the session state, identity, and process model. So only the keys defined within these sections in the web config files.
So you just make a registry entry then and hide it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but my personal problem is with the encryption API. So any other approach, any other key you want to save using this model requires you to use encryption. So at that point, if you don't like the registry, you can, and you manage encryption yourself, you can store critical information just about everywhere.
All right. What is it that you have against the crypto API or encryption in general?
Nothing. It's just I don't like. I don't like encryption in general.
Extra complexity.
I don't like API for encryption in general.
Okay.
It's not matter of security or performance of nothing. Just a personal preference.
Personal preference. Okay.
I would avoid that if possible at all.
Okay.
You dislike it more than Southern barbecue?
Well, it's kind of.
Oh, man.
If I'm hungry, I can have Southern barbecue. So if I'm desperate, I can have encryption.
Hey, Dino, y'all want another piece of meat? Oh, man.
It's almost like you were there, Carl.
Yeah. So you hate country and western music too? I take it. It's nothing. It's no Pavarotti, you know.
Uh-huh.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Rock.
Rock.
Just rock. Every sort, every flavor of rock. Old style rock and roll Tutti Frutti or stuff like that.
Tutti Frutti.
Rock Around the Clock, whatever. Yeah, I like it.
Are there any good Italian rock bands that you like?
No, there are just a couple of them.
Yeah.
But I still love Rolling Stones.
Cool.
And also Beatles, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So you like the classic rock and roll.
Yeah.
So no Puccini, no Rigoletto,
No, I don't like classic music.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't like it.
Well, it's okay. I can only take so much Wagner in one evening anyway. So I like some classical, just can't stand opera. Especially the female voices, the shrill. Drives me crazy.
Yeah, the only time I like opera is in the Bugs Bunny cartoon.
That's right.
Kill the Wabbit.
Elmer Fudd doing the ring cycle. Brunhilde.
Are you trying with a special particular piece of some opera maybe?
No, we're talking about there's a Bugs Bunny cartoon where Elmer Fudd.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
he does a Wagner piece.
I suspect you were going to start with a performance.
No. Kill the Wabbit. All right. Well, anyway, enough silliness. So you're always writing articles for MSDN magazine.
Yep.
That's
my job. That's my primary job.
So you have a regular column.
Yep.
Tell me about the column and some of the cool things that you've done in there.
Actually, there is the article in the June magazine is about building a custom control, ASP.NET custom control, that basically generates a chart, a bar chart, but using HTML, so using tables.
Okay.
And I made it a templated control and a data-bound control.
Oh, and good.
Yeah. And with a very nice trick to display a rule behind the bar chart to give you an idea of values. And it's just a simple bitmap, a background bitmap.
Oh, good.
In the table. So actually, that article and that control in particular are very, very useful because I'm using that. I used already in a couple of applications that I worked on in the past few weeks. And actually, it is effective and because it's HTML, only HTML, so you don't have extra effort of a second round trip to download even a dynamically generated JPEG image or GIF image, whatever it is.
Right.
So it's effective in terms of bandwidth, and it's cool in terms of the UI. Yeah. Of course, it is not 3D, it is not a pie chart, but it's great.
But it works.
Since the control is data bound, it's effective too, also from the programming point of view.
Yeah. And
the fact that it supports templates makes it completely and fully customizable.
That brings up a very good question for me. You know, when you pull a calendar control or a data grid control onto a web page in VisualStudio.net, you right-click and you select Auto Format, a dialog box pops up with a bunch of different styles for the data grid control or the calendar control. And there might even be more controls that I don't know that have this auto format feature. And what it effectively does is sets a whole bunch of styles for the selected item, the border color, the this color, that color.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that list somewhere on the disk where I can add my own styles to it and modify them?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I don't have an answer, but
great.
I don't have an answer, but well, I would say yes. I think that somewhere there should be some sort of file in any place hidden somewhere under Visual Studio, in the Visual Studio 3, where that information is stored. I asked that question several times myself, but I never found enough time to dig it out.
Yeah, that's exactly where I find myself, too.
Yeah.
So I feel so. I feel yes, but I have to answer right now, no.
Okay.
No, I don't know.
Oh, well, we'll check that out, and maybe if we can find a link, we'll put it on the website.
Hey, this is Carl. We since found out that those settings and those styles are hard-coded into the calendar control dialog box setup template thing whatever it is, but it's hard-coded. So don't bother looking for it. Okay, now back to the show.
So you're a 1,000-page book.
Yep.
What kind of topics do you cover in this book?
Okay, I can read the table of contents if you want.
let's check it out.
Okay, okay. Now, basically, the book is articulated in 5 or maybe 6 parts.
Okay.
Basically, I cover basics of a page. So, in how pages work. So, basically, the HTTP runtime model. Also with insights on the new IIS 6 process model.
Oh, good.
I cover controls in detail, so existing controls in details, but with information about how to create, for example, controls dynamically, what really happens when you create controls dynamically, how the view state is managed for dynamically created controls and stuff like that.
Okay.
Then there is a part on ADO.NET and data access with a chapter about programming with data grids, with another one with repeater and data list controls, and a chapter about paging data in web applications, because this is another big problem. Another problem
right.
that, the availability of smart components like the cache and classes like the data grid does not completely solve, because if you have, for example, session-specific data, and if you have information that by design cannot be cached because it has to be always up to date, the cache is not useful at all, or not that much useful as Microsoft seemed to suggest.
For that data, yeah.
Yeah, for that particular context, for that particular scenario, of course. But it is a very common scenario indeed, I think, or at least based on my experience.
Sure.
So in that case, you need to resort to smart SQL queries, because if your data needs to be up to date, I don't think there are many other options other than going down to SQL Server or whatever the database is each and every time.
Sure.
So in that case, using smart storage procedures, using smart queries, and especially when you have to page, that's important.
Right, sure.
So I think that one of the things that ADO.NET brings up is the importance, it's a sort of revamped importance of writing smart queries, smart SQL queries. So a knowledge of SQL, the language, the particular language for the particular DBMS you are working with, is an aspect of programming that probably was people forgot about in the past few years. And only with ADO.NET, with an annotated overview of ADO.NET, can regain the due importance, I think.
Right, that's very true. I often see people write very inefficient queries. They're selecting a bunch of columns they don't use from the table, or in some cases they don't use a where clause and they select every row.
Yeah, in particular, there's an aspect that I want to emphasize, and then this is one. When you use a data grid to page through a data grid, for example, and if you use the standard and simple approach to pagination, which consists basically of running the query each and every time and binding the whole data set you get back to the grid, you run into a sort of paradox, because you may be downloading thousands or at least hundreds of rows just to display 10 or 5 or 20. Because the data grid correctly manages the data source for you and extracts only the rows that fit into the particular page it is displaying.
So if you just get all the rows that are for a particular page,
but you're still getting all the rows that the query selects, and you are binding all those rows to the grid, and then it's up. The grid, is smart enough to select only a few rows, but all the rows, the whole record set, the whole result set, the query generated has been bound and has been stored into the web server memory.
Right, so I would suggest making your queries only one page at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And this raises another problem. How can you accomplish that? Okay, there are many ways, fortunately. But the most efficient ways of getting exactly that page require that you enter some changes to the tables, or you make some assumptions on the structure and the characteristics of the table. And sometimes you have a very tough DBA people working along with you, and you cannot make those assumptions. So you need to resort to SQL, so nesting queries using the top clause if you're working with SQL Server,
right,
or if you're working
max.
with, say, Oracle, you have the row num keyword,
count,
which is there just to help you. And I've heard rumors that we can have a similar keyword in Yukon.
What if you take one query and insert all the rows into a temporary table, and then pull out the maximum, the count from that? Divide that by your number of pages, and or the number of items per page, and just select those items.
Yeah, that it works, but temporary tables probably are not the most efficient way of using SQL Server. I think that. I've never
forget
done
the temporary tables. Why not just get a count of the number of rows that match, and just insert their numbers into a separate table. Yeah, what are we talking about? How many rows are we talking about here? Are we talking about 10,000 rows? Are you going to do paging for, 50,000 pages?
No. No, absolutely
Are we talking
not.
about, probably 500
if you have
rows?
If you have to page through such a huge number of rows,
then it's not,
you're probably writing the wrong application.
The wrong code, exactly.
Or the wrong way.
So I don't know, as if, a temporary table is not going to slow you down that much.
Well, probably you're right. Mine was more a way of reasoning in general terms. So embedded queries are probably in general more efficient than temporary tables. But certainly temporary tables can lead to write a more maintainable code, probably, because you don't have to get crazy, to understand the complexity of and the sophistication of that text that turns out to be SQL.
But it's a fascinating topic, and you're right. One of the things that I really respect about your writing is that you clearly lay out some gotchas, and you say, hey, there are issues here, and you really have to think your way through them, so let's do that. And rather than just, being a cheerleader for this technology or that technology, which, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying who is and who isn't. I'm just saying that it's good to hear somebody who's focused on, okay, this is the problem, and let's think through the problem and address it somehow in a couple of ways.
So is your book already out, Dino, or is it coming out shortly?
1st of July. The 1st of July. The new one.
Well, I'm going to put that book on my list of books to buy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's already available through Amazon if you want. I can give you the URL.
Yeah, let's put it up on the site.
Yeah, we'll put a link on.
Absolutely.
But actually, it looks like that some people already ordered it through Amazon.
Cool.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, I see it on eBay right here. No. What are you talking about at DevConnections in New Orleans on May 6th through 9th?
Yep.
Yeah, what are some of the topics you're doing?
I don't know which one you choose.
Okay. I particularly like the 1 hour of...
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, that's the idea for that talk, actually. I got that idea many years ago when I was a simple and very shy programmer working on Windows 16, Windows 3.1 or whatever. Actually, I had an application, and I continually were facing requests from different users for adding slightly new features, slightly different features from the existing
Did we
standard.
work at the same company back then?
Yeah.
I seem to recall.
So one day I decided I had enough of that way of working. So I said, let me build into the application a sort of general layer that will make possible for users or for me, for other programmers, to extend in a rather neat and easy way the set of functions and the user interface of the application. So at that time, I simply defined an architecture so that the application, a Win16 application, could call into a DLL with a function with a certain name and with a certain signature. Well, actually, COM was not around yet at the time, but this is exactly the concept of an interface.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So in .NET, actually, I'm doing exactly the same, but this time using interfaces, using classes, and using in particular the activator component to create in a sort of late bound mode,
or like a dynamic
an instance of the
feature.
component where you simply know the name of the class and the assembly. So I load the component registered in a certain place to fit into a certain area of the application, so that it's just a matter of instantiating a class dynamically from an assembly.
So it's sort of like a plugin that you
plugin, exactly, plugin, just a plugin. It's a generic architecture for making your application pluggable.
That's very cool.
Yep.
And you're going to be demonstrating that at DevConnections in a 1-hour talk.
Absolutely.
Cool. That's a great conference. What did you think of last year, Orlando?
That was great.
Yeah.
It was great. I think now it's the #1 conference.
Yeah, I think so. There's just so much great content.
No. I think, but for a number of reasons, I think also from the attendees' point of view. And I'm not saying only content, but only for all the other things that attendees can have and want to find around the conference.
Yeah.
I think that for a number of reasons, DevConnections now is definitely #1 conference, technical conference.
Cool. Well, you heard it here, folks. Get on down to New Orleans, May 6th through 9th. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm also hopping on a plane after that conference and going to Montreal for another one called DevTeach.
Yeah, I know.
Are you doing DevTeach too?
No.
Okay. Well,
no, because that week there was the birthday of my son. It's my son's birthday, so
oh, good.
I need to stay home.
Yeah,
to have your priorities right.
Yeah. So that's going to be a 2 or 3 day conference up in Montreal. I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, what are you waiting for? There's only a little time left to register for Visual Studio Connections, May 6th through 9th, 2003 at the New Orleans Hilton in Nolens, Louisiana. Hey, you could win a Harley. Just go to www.devconnections.com/VS. Keynote speakers include David Lazar, the Group Product Manager for the .NET Tools and Services, Microsoft Corporation, and Scott Guthrie, the co-creator of ASP.NET from Microsoft. This is, as Dino said, this is a great conference. It is the premier conference. And we may not get Bill Gates and we may not have Steve Ballmer talking up there, but let's face it, you don't go to a developer conference to hear those guys, do you? No, you want to hear developers. You want to hear from the trenches. This is what it's all about at DevConnections. Check it out. www.devconnections.com/VS. Okay, now let's get back to Dino and Mark here on .NET Rocks. Don't you go away.
Well, you've written obviously tons and tons of solutions and great articles. What are some other highlights of things that you figured out? And like I said before, one of the things I really admire about you is that you come up with great applications for technologies and how to apply them to do something that will actually save you time, save you money, save you effort, or just do something you couldn't do before. Just pick any great example from your history here to share with us.
For example, the plugin application is
well, sure. How about another one?
Probably is the most illustrious example.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly that. And also, I think that on another line, and specifically speaking of web applications and ASP.NET applications, I think that the data grid control is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I come up in a few months, but just trying to learn the internals of the data grid.
Yeah.
So in a few months, I've been able to create a component, so easily reusable component, really powerful, rich and nice and pleasant to see, very, very user-friendly and really attractive, also from the simple UI perspective. Well, for example, one of the applications that, it's not an application, it's just a feature that I've been able to build into the data grid control is just the ability to make it look like a tab strip.
Huh.
Okay, so but just changing with dynamic styling, just changing the way in which the pager bar looks like. So if you move the pager bar on top of the grid, which is something that the control perfectly supports,
right?
And if you just arrange a few colors, background colors, foreground colors, font, borders, well, it looks like just exactly like a tab strip control. So not really different from the Microsoft Internet Explorer control, if you know it.
Yeah.
Right, the controls you can download.
Exactly, yeah, one of the free controls. Those controls exploit heavily dynamic HTML. It's simply a server-side control, so there is no support, no special support expected from the client. Yeah. But just changing styles.
Now, did you derive a new class?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you derive a new class. And actually, I think that there's an article that I wrote for ASP Pro magazine, ASP.NET Pro magazine.
Yeah.
That just provides you with a tabbed grid control. It's a separate control, and you can you can either work with this having the text that normally you display in the pager bar on the tabs, but you can also customize the tabs so that you end up having a grid that lets you page for months over here. So let me see the order in January, February, March, whatever.
Huh.
So it's to accomplish this feature, to accomplish this this feature, you have to, in a certain way, you have to revert the order, the relationship between the number of pages in a data source displayed through a grid and the size of the page. You normally keep constant the size of the page, so 10, 20, whatever maximum number of rows in a page, and you leave variable the number of pages to click in the pager bar.
Huh.
Okay, but if you revert this relationship, and if you say, okay, I have a fixed number of links in the pager bar, so 12 links, one per each month in a year, and I keep variable the number of rows displayed in the grid, you have, without completely rewriting the control, but just configuring the data grid control in a slightly different way and just exploiting custom paging, which is a built-in feature of the grid control, you have a way to perform a sort of logical pagination. You don't page 10 records at a time. You page logical blocks of records.
Sure.
All the orders say issued in January, which for user is critical. And having such a feature implemented in an application makes extremely easier for them to work with the application, because it's more natural for them to look for orders, so to speak, issued in January in a month rather than searching by position. And you don't have to build anything really new for this, just configuring, just adapting the control, an existing control. And this is another application I'm really proud of.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk about, or ask Dino, is something that we ask almost every guest that comes on that is an expert in the field of ASP.NET. What do you think about using a tool like the Web Matrix that generates inline code? Do you see any compelling reason to still write ASP.NET pages using inline rather than CodeBehind?
I don't like CodeBehind.
Wow, there's a bombshell.
Wow, that is right. So you are writing your code inline.
Let's say that as long as the size of the code is reasonably short, I do love using inline code.
So you write
I tend to resort to CodeBehind only if the size and the complexity of the code requires a serious editor. That's it, and Visual Studio.
So that means you don't use Visual Studio?
Yeah. But I would welcome...
Dino, wait a minute.
Excuse me?
So you don't... hold on now.
Carl's losing his mind.
So you don't use VisualStudio.net for ASP programming?
Consider that... No, okay, this is not correct, that I'm not using Visual Studio. Let's say that in my daily activity, not always I work on real-world projects. So if I work on production code, on code that needs to be real-world, and on complex applications, serious applications, real applications, I use Visual Studio. That's it, stop.
Okay.
Period. But a large part of my job consists in writing small pieces of code, test applications.
Right.
And in this case, as long as the size of the code that I write is reasonably short to fit in a script block, I prefer using inline code. Okay. I feel using inline code more natural.
Thanks for clearing that up for me, Dino. I need to take my nitroglycerin pill.
Oh, how funny. Well, since you do some work with inline code, do you use the web matrix at all?
I try. Normally I use Visual Notepad.
Ah, Visual Notepad.
Visual Notepad. That's my favorite tool, absolutely.
Yeah. Visual.net Notepad.
Right.
Yeah. Notepad.net.
Hey, you won't be able to say that unless Notepad generates web services. So.
Well, you could use Notepad to generate a web service.
Yeah, but there isn't a web service feature in Notepad, therefore it will never be Notepad.net.
I will try to subclass Notepad. Yeah. To make it support web services, to make it connect automatically. Also, an auto-update feature would be lovely.
Right.
Well, Dino, another thing that we like to quiz our guests about are your favorite sites on the internet.
Absolutely.
Where do you navigate to get information?
What kind of information you mean?
Well, just anything. What are some of your favorite sites that you visit multiple times in a week?
Well, no, I think that the website that I visit more often is the website of an Italian newspaper. That's where I try to get all sorts of information. Well, I live in Italy, so normally I speak Italian, so that's my favorite. That's certainly the Repubblica.it is certainly the website that I visit more frequently.
Okay, maybe I should clarify it as a technical website.
Technical website, MSDN.com. MSDN, the homepage of MSDN, starting from MSDN and then moving around.
Are there any communities that you frequent, like forums or anything like that?
No.
News groups?
No. The only community website that I hit from time to time is ASP.net.
Okay.
www.asp.net. Sometimes ASPalliance.com, but...
How about your favorite tools, utilities, or other cool downloads?
Notepad. Only Notepad.
Real men use Notepad.
I don't use so many tools or so many special tools.
You're a
there
purist.
is a utility. Oh, okay. Well, one of the utilities that I really love is Anacrino.
Okay.
The decompiler. Yeah. That's my favorite tool.
What is it?
Absolutely. By far, my favorite tool.
What is it?
Anacrino. It's a decompiler. .NET decompiler. Free .NET decompiler.
Right, is that the one that Rammer used in his book? He was decompiling remoting code, I believe, with it.
So tell me what you can do. Can you decompile the framework code?
Yep.
And what do you get?
That's the way in which I discovered so many things described in the book.
Sorry, what do you get as the result of that? Source code?
Source code. You get C# source code. Well, it is not exactly like the original source code, but it's enough for you. So you cannot really use to steal code, actually.
Okay.
But it's enough for you to form a clear idea of how things are implemented and how things are going on.
So
which, for my purposes, learning how the framework or portions of the framework work is a fundamental tool.
Have you used any of the rotor code to the actual rotor code?
Yeah, I've used that. I know that, and I used extensively the source code, the source files in rotor. But consider that in rotor there is no source code about ADO.NET and ASP.NET.
Right. There's nothing Windows specific, in other words.
Yep. So for me, writing now books on ASP.NET and mostly ADO.NET, a tool like that is a fundamental help. When I wrote my XML book last summer, since the XML source files are in the rotor, I've used rotor. Absolutely. Yep.
Well,
and you can learn a lot of things. You can see that also Microsoft guys leave bags or use strange, so to speak, programming styles. For example, it's nice to see, looking at the source code of the XML serializer class in rotor, I was pleased to discover that there is a clear and well-commented point in the source code of the class in which there is, if this object is a data set, do this. Otherwise, no, actually, if you consider that, for example, the XML serializer class is a class that can be used, the web services use to serialize back to the client in XML format an object, which is the return value of a certain method.
Sure.
So, you know that you cannot have in a web service a method of a class returning a data table object.
That's right. Data table
if you
is
try
not
that, you have an error.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the error says that, more or less, that the data table object cannot be serialized.
But a data set can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Only the data set can. If you only the data set can among the ADO.NET objects. So the question is, you read the documentation for the XML serializer class, and you learn that the class does not support, for serialization, classes that have circular references. So you say, okay, the data table has a clear circular reference. So that's why I have this error. But also the data set has a lot of circular references. Okay, that's the point. Because there is a clear if in the code of the class that supports in a special way XML serialization for the dataset class.
I get it.
That's it.
Well, that makes sense.
Yep.
Dino, any last-minute words of wisdom to impart on the listening audience?
Be productive.
Be productive.
So the accent. Oh, productive.
Productive.
Productive. Productive.
Bellissimo.
Oh, fantastico.
Okay. Thank you.
It's very cool.
Thanks very much, Dino.
Okay. Let me say it's very cool in Italian. È figo. È fighissimo.
What is it?
Fighissimo.
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 This isn't some swear that you're telling me so I can go and offend people, is it?
Right, you're going to say that and get slapped.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Dino. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
It's been a great pleasure
having you. It's me to say
thanks
to you.
I'm sorry?
It's me to say thanks to you all.
Oh, no.
To you and Mark.
Not at all.
Well, it was fun to meet you, Dino, and I enjoyed our conversation last night.
Too.
So that was very nice.
Okay, well,
the only problem was the southern barbecue, but
yeah, that was the downside.
I survived that, no problem.
Right.
Okay. Next week, it's time for steak and eggs. I don't know. I can't think of anything. Oh, well.
Green eggs and ham.
Green eggs and ham. All right, Dino, take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Life is hard.